Michael Hartwell stood in the law office on October 3, 2023, holding a document he thought would change his life. The inheritance was final, $7.2 million. The estate in Riverside County, the investment portfolio his father had built over 40 years, all of it legally his. 3 weeks later, he would have nothing. But on that autumn afternoon, surrounded by mahogany furniture and the smell of old books, Michael believed the hardest part was over. His father, Thomas Hartwell, had died 4 months earlier at 71. The grief was still raw, but at least the estate was settled. At least there was certainty. He signed the last page. The lawyer, Richard Pemberton, witnessed the signature with the detached efficiency of someone who had overseen hundreds of these transactions. Michael's wife, Jennifer, squeezed his hand. Their 2 children waited in the car outside. "Congratulations," Pemberton said, though his tone suggested the word was merely procedural. "The assets will transfer within 10 business days." Michael nodded. He felt exhausted more than triumphant. The previous months had been a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and sleepless nights wondering if he was doing right by his father's memory. Thomas Hartwell had been a complicated man, brilliant in business, distant at home. He had built a commercial real estate empire from a single property purchase in 1984, turning it into a network of strip malls, office buildings, and residential developments across Southern California. Michael was the only child. His mother, Elizabeth, had died when he was 19, and Thomas never remarried. For 2 decades, it had just been the 2 of them. Navigating an awkward relationship built more on obligation than warmth. Michael had tried to get close to his father. Thomas had tried, in his way, to show love, but there was always a wall between them, constructed from Thomas's workaholic habits and Michael's quiet resentment of being raised by nannies and boarding schools. Still, Michael was the son, the heir, the only logical beneficiary. That's what everyone assumed. The will had been straightforward. Thomas left everything to Michael with a few small bequests to longtime employees and a donation to a heart disease research foundation. No surprises, no complications. The estate attorneys had reviewed everything. Creditors had been notified. Tax obligations calculated. It was, by all accounts, a clean inheritance. Michael left the law office that day believing his future was secure. He and Jennifer had already started making plans. They would pay off their mortgage, set up college funds for the kids, maybe take that trip to Italy they'd been postponing for years. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was freedom from financial anxiety. It was the ability to breathe. He didn't know that on that same day, 200 miles north in San Francisco, a woman named Claire Donovan was boarding a flight to Los Angeles. He didn't know she carried a leather folder containing documents that would dismantle everything. And he didn't know that his father, Thomas Hartwell, had been living a parallel life for over 30 years. Let's go back to understand how this began. Thomas Hartwell was born in 1952 in a working-class neighborhood of Detroit. His father was a factory worker. His mother cleaned houses. Thomas was the first in his family to attend college, earning a business degree from Michigan State in 1974. He was hungry, ambitious, and determined to never be poor again. He moved to California in 1976 with $800 and a used Chevy Nova. He worked construction during the day and took night classes in real estate law. By 1979, he had his real estate license. By 1984, he had purchased his first property, a neglected strip mall in Riverside that he renovated and leased to small businesses. That's when he met Elizabeth Chun, a school teacher. They married in 1985. Michael was born in 1987. Elizabeth was warm, artistic, and entirely unprepared for the kind of man Thomas would become. As his business grew, he became obsessed with expansion, acquisition, and wealth accumulation. He worked 16-hour days. He traveled constantly. He missed birthdays, anniversarios, and school plays. Elizabeth endured this for 16 years before dying of ovarian cancer in 2003. Michael, then 19 and away at college, came home for the funeral and found his father eerily composed, already back at work within days. It was as if Thomas had compartmentalized his grief into a locked drawer he refused to open. Over the next 2 decades, Michael and Thomas maintained a cordial but distant relationship. Michael became a high school history teacher, married Jennifer, had 2 kids, and lived a modest, middle-class life in Orange County. Thomas continued building his empire, acquiring properties, and aging into a stern, solitary figure who seemed to trust no one and need no one. When Thomas died of a massive heart attack in June 2023, Michael felt a confusing mix of sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the relationship they never had. Relief that the awkward obligation of trying was finally over. The funeral was small. A handful of business associates attended, a few old employees. Michael gave a eulogy that felt hollow because he realized, standing at the podium, that he didn't really know who his father was. He knew Thomas the businessman, Thomas the workaholic, but Thomas the person that remained a mystery. After the funeral, the legal process began. Michael met with Richard Pemberton, who had been Thomas's attorney for 15 years. Pemberton presented the will. It was dated March 2022, just over a year before Thomas's death. Everything, D'Amico, clean, clear, uncomplicated. Your father was very thorough, Pemberton said. He updated this will specifically to ensure there would be no ambiguity. Michael found that statement odd at the time, but didn't pursue it. No ambiguity about what? He was the only child. Who else would there be? The estate entered probate. The process was lengthy but standard. Assets were appraised. Properties were valued. Bank accounts were audited. By September, everything was ready for final transfer. Michael attended the necessary hearings. He signed the required documents. The judge approved the distribution. On October 3rd, Michael signed the final papers. 10 days later, Claire Donovan walked into Richard Pemberton's office without an appointment. She was 47 years old, dressed in a simple navy blazer and jeans, carrying a worn leather folder. Pemberton's secretary tried to turn her away, explaining that Mr. Pemberton only met with scheduled clients. Claire said she would wait. She sat in the lobby for 3 hours until Pemberton, curious and mildly annoyed, agreed to see her. She sat across from his desk and said, "My name is Claire Donovan. Thomas Hartwell was my partner for 32 years, and I'm here to contest the distribution of his estate." Pemberton stared at her. "Excuse me?" Claire opened the folder. "I have documentation, letters, financial records, photographs, and a legal agreement. Thomas and I signed in 1990. I didn't come forward during probate because I was told by Thomas's wishes that I should allow the initial process to complete. But now I'm exercising my rights under California law to challenge the will based on information the court was not provided." Hartwell, you should have disclosed this during the probate period. The estate has been settled. The assets have been distributed. The assets have been allocated. Claire, but they haven't fully transferred yet. I checked. You have 7 days before the final financial instruments move into Michael Hartwell's name. It gives me a legal window to file a claim. Pemberton's hand moved toward his phone. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "You can," Claire said calmly, "but I'm going to the probate court today, either way. I thought I'd extend the courtesy of informing you first. I'm not here to cause unnecessary pain. I'm here because Thomas wanted certain things, and those things were not reflected in the will Michael received." "What things?" Claire slid a document across the desk. "Thomas and I had a daughter. Her name is Lily. She's 26 years old, and according to the agreement Thomas signed, she's entitled to half of his estate." The room seemed to tilt. Pemberton picked up the document. It was a cohabitation and partnership agreement, signed by Thomas Hartwell and Claire Donovan, dated July. It outlined terms of a long-term relationship, shared financial responsibilities, and provisions for their child. "This is impossible," Pemberton whispered. "Thomas never mentioned a daughter. He never mentioned you." "I know," Claire said. "That was the arrangement. I'll explain everything. But first, I need to know if you're going to represent the estate's position, or if I need to prepare for a contested hearing." Sat back in his chair. 23 years of working with Thomas Hartwell, and he had never suspected this, never seen a clue. Thomas had been meticulous about separating his lives. Apparently, Pemberton thought of Michael, who had just signed the papers, who believed his future was finally secure. "I need to verify this information," Pemberton said slowly. "If what you're saying is true, this will destroy that family." "I know," Claire said quietly, "but it's the truth, and Lily deserves what her father intended for her." Pemberton called Michael that evening. He said there was a complication. He didn't explain details over the phone, just asked Michael to come to the office the next morning. Michael heard something in the lawyer's voice that made his stomach drop. He barely slept that night. Jennifer asked, "What was wrong?" Michael said he didn't know, but some instinct, some deep intuitive dread, told him everything was about to change. The next morning, Michael sat in the same chair where he had signed the final papers. Pemberton looked like he hadn't slept either. "Michael, a woman came to see me yesterday. Her name is Claire Donovan. She claimed she had a long-term relationship with your father and that they had a daughter together." The words didn't make sense at first. Michael heard them, but his brain couldn't process the meaning. "What?" "She has documentation, a partnership agreement, financial records showing your father supported her and the child for decades. She's filing a claim against the estate." Michael felt the room blur. "My father didn't have another child. I would have known. Someone would have told me. She says it was kept secret intentionally." "She has evidence, Michael. Photographs, letters, bank transfers going back to the early 90s. I've spent the last 18 hours reviewing what she provided, and I have to tell you, it looks credible." "How much is she asking for?" Pemberton hesitated. "Half. According to the agreement she has, Thomas promised her that their daughter would receive 50% of his estate upon his death." Michael stood up. "That's insane. The will leaves everything to me. She can't just show up and demand half of my inheritance. She can challenge the will. And if she proves she and Thomas had an agreement, and if she proves your father intended to provide for this daughter, a court might honor that intent over the written will, especially if she can demonstrate that Thomas failed to update his will to reflect his actual wishes. Why wouldn't he have updated the will then?" "I don't know. That's one of many questions we need answered." Michael paced the office. "This is extortion." She saw the obituary, realized there was money, and invented this story. "That was my first thought too," Pemberton admitted. "But the documents she has are old. Some date back 30 years. The photographs show her with Thomas over decades. The bank records show consistent payments from accounts I verified were your father's. This isn't a fabrication. Michael felt his hands shaking. I want to meet her. I don't think that's a good idea right now. I don't care what you think. If this woman is claiming to have been with my father for 30 years, if she's claiming he had another child, I want to look her in the eye and hear her say it. Pemberton sighed. I'll reach out to her attorney. She has an attorney already. She retained one this morning, David Kesle. He specializes in contested estates. Michael laughed bitterly. Of course she did. If stories like this stay with you, subscribing means you won't miss what happens next. The meeting was arranged for 3 days later, on October 20th, at a neutral location, a conference room in a downtown Los Angeles office building. Michael insisted Jennifer come with him. Claire arrived with her attorney, David Kessler, a sharp-eyed man in his 60s. Michael studied Claire as she entered. She was tall, with graying brown hair pulled into a ponytail. She wore minimal makeup. There was something about her face, a certain set to her jaw, that reminded him disturbingly of his father. They sat across from each other at a long table. Kessler began with legal formalities, but Michael interrupted. Just tell me the truth. Were you with my father? Claire met his eyes. Yes. For how long? 32 years. Years. We met in 1991. Michael felt dizzy. 1991. He would have been 4 years old. His mother was still alive. My mother didn't die until 2003. I know, Claire said quietly. I'm not proud of how it started, but it's the truth. So you were the other woman. You had an affair with my father while he was married to my mother. It was more complicated than that. How convenient. Kessler interjected. Mr. Hartwell, I understand this is emotional, but we're here to establish facts, not assign blame. Michael ignored him. Tell me how you met. Claire folded her hands on the table. I was working as a property manager for one of the buildings your father owned. He came in to review lease agreements. We started talking. He was different then, or maybe I was just young and naive. We started seeing each other. It wasn't planned, it just happened. Things don't just happen, you make choices. You're right. I did, and I've lived with those choices for 3 decades. Did my mother know? I don't think so. Thomas was very careful. We never appeared in public together. He would visit me, never the other way around. We had an entire relationship that existed in the margins of his real life. Then why did you stay? Claire's expression softened. Because I loved him. And because by 1994, we had Lily. Michael felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Tell me about her. She's 26. She's a teacher. Actually, like you. She teaches 3rd grade in San Francisco. She loves photography and hiking. She volunteers at an animal shelter on weekends. She's kind and thoughtful and entirely unaware of how much her existence is about to complicate everyone's lives. She doesn't know you're doing this. She knows I'm pursuing what her father intended. She doesn't know the details yet. I wanted to see if this could be resolved before involving her directly. Resolved? Michael repeated. You mean before you destroy my family for money? I don't want to destroy anyone. I want what's fair. Fair would have been coming forward when my father was alive. Fair would have been not hiding for 30 years. Claire's voice remained steady. I didn't hide by choice. It was the arrangement Thomas wanted. He said he couldn't leave your mother, not while she was sick. And after she died, he said he couldn't tell you because it would destroy your relationship. He kept promising he would handle it, that he would make things right legally, but he never did. And then he died suddenly. And I realized if I didn't act, Lily would get nothing. Maybe that's what he wanted. No. Claire's voice hardened. I know what he wanted. We talked about it constantly, especially in the last 5 years. He was terrified of dying without ensuring Lily was taken care of. He just couldn't bring himself to tell you. So you're telling me instead? I didn't have a choice. Michael stood. This isn't over. If you think you're getting half of my father's estate based on some documents in your word, you're wrong. I'll fight this. Kessler spoke calmly. Mr. Hartwell, I would strongly advise against prolonged litigation. It will be expensive, emotionally draining, and based on the evidence we have, unlikely to go in your favor. Then we'll see what a judge thinks. Michael left the conference room with Jennifer close behind. In the elevator, she said, Michael, what if she's telling the truth? I don't care. You should care. If your father really did have another daughter, he didn't. This is a scam. But even as he said it, Michael knew it wasn't. There was something in Claire's eyes, in her quiet certainty, that felt real. And more disturbing, there were gaps in his own memories, inconsistencies he had never questioned. His father's frequent absences, the unexplained trips to San Francisco, the separate bank accounts Thomas had always dismissed as business. Over the next week, Michael hired his own attorney, a litigation specialist named Patricia Vance. Vance reviewed Claire's documentation and delivered a grim assessment. She has a strong case. The partnership agreement is legally binding. The bank records prove continuous financial support. The photographs and letters establish a long-term relationship. And California law favors equitable distribution when there's evidence of a parent's intent to provide for a child, even if that intent isn't reflected in a formal will. So what do? We challenge the validity of the documents. We question whether Thomas was mentally competent when he signed the agreement. We argue that the will represents his final wishes and should supersede any prior agreement. We look for inconsistencies in her story. Can we win? Vance hesitated. Maybe, but it will cost you hundreds of thousands in legal fees, and it will take years, and there's a significant chance you'll lose. What if I just refuse to settle? Then this goes to court. The estate remains frozen during litigation. You won't have access to any of the assets, and if you lose, you'll be responsible for her legal fees as well as your own. Michael felt trapped. There has to be another option. There is. You negotiate a settlement. You offer her less than half, but more than nothing. You resolve this quickly and move on with your life. I'm not giving her anything. But Michael's resolve began to crack as more information emerged. Pemberton, conducting his own investigation, discovered that Thomas had maintained a second office in San Francisco, something he had never mentioned to Michael. Bank records showed regular payments to Claire's address going back to 19. Receipts confirmed Thomas had purchased a house in Claire's name. Most damning was a letter Pemberton found in Thomas's safe deposit box, dated December 2022, just 6 months before his death. It was addressed to Michael, though it had never been sent. Michael read it alone in his living room. Michael, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And there are things you need to know. I wasn't the father you deserved, and I wasn't the man I should have been. I made choices that seemed necessary at the time, but that I came to regret. There's a woman named Claire, and we have a daughter named Lily. I loved them both, Though I loved them in the margins of my life, hidden away like a shameful secret. I told myself I was protecting you and your mother. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. I was too much of a coward to face the consequences of my choices. By the time you read this, Claire will probably have come forward. Please, don't hate her. She endured years of being hidden, of being second, of raising our daughter alone most of the time. Lily is your sister, whether you want to accept that or not. I've failed both of you in different ways. I hope you can find a way to be better than I was. I've arranged for Lily to receive half of the estate. Claire has the documentation. I know this is a shock. I'm sorry. I didn't have the courage to tell you myself. I'm sorry for all of it. Your father. Michael read it 3 times. Then he crumpled it and threw it across the room. Jennifer picked it up, smoothed it out, and read it herself. Michael. Donnie admitted it. He wanted her to have half. He also never sent this letter. He kept it locked away. Maybe he changed his mind. Or maybe he just ran out of time. Michael put his head in his hands. Everything he thought he knew about his father was disintegrating. Thomas hadn't been distant and workaholic because of business pressures. He had been distant because he was living a double life. All those missed birthdays and school events. He was probably with Claire and Lily. All those unexplained trips. A second family. The betrayal got deeper than Michael could articulate. It wasn't just about the money. It was about understanding that he had never been enough. His father had needed another family. A secret one. A hidden one. And now that family was emerging from the shadows to claim what Thomas had apparently promised them. Michael met with Patricia Vance again. I want to know everything about this woman and her daughter. Where they lived. How they lived. What Thomas gave them. Vance hired an investigator. Within 2 weeks, they had a comprehensive report. Claire Donovan had lived in the same modest house in San Francisco's Outer Sunset District since 1999. The house was valued at approximately $1.1 million, purchased by Thomas in Claire's name. She worked as a property manager until 2010, then stopped working outside the home. Bank records showed Thomas provided her with approximately $8,000 per month, which continued until his death. Lily Donovan, born March 1997, attended public schools in San Francisco. She graduated from San Francisco State University in 2019 with a teaching credential. She had no criminal record, no debt, and no apparent social media presence beyond a private Instagram account. The investigator's conclusion: subject appears to be exactly what she claims. No evidence of fraud or fabrication. Family lived modestly, despite financial support from Thomas Hutt. No indication of extravagant spending or hidden assets. Michael read the report and felt something shift inside him. This wasn't a con. Claire and Lily were real, and they had lived for decades on the periphery of his father's life. Hidden but present, secret but supported. He thought about his own childhood. The private schools, the expensive vacations, the trust fund his father had set up. He had been given so much, while Lily had been given just enough to survive. Both were Thomas's children, but only one had been acknowledged. For the first time, Michael felt something other than anger. He felt curiosity. I want to meet her, he told Jennifer. Who? Lily. My sister. Jennifer looked at him carefully. Are you sure? No. But I need to. Claire was initially resistant. She doesn't know about you yet. Not really. She knows her father was Thomas, but she doesn't know about his other family. I've protected her from that. You can't protect her anymore, Michael said. This is going to court, unless we find another way. She should know what's happening. Claire finally agreed. They met at a cafe in San Francisco on November 8th, 5 weeks after Claire had first appeared in Pemberton's office. Michael drove up alone, despite Jennifer's protests. He needed to do this himself. Lily Donovan was waiting at a corner table. She looked nothing like Thomas, which surprised Michael. She had Claire's features, softer and younger. But when she stood to greet him, Michael saw it, the way she held herself, a certain stiffness in her posture. That was Thomas. They sat awkwardly. Lily ordered coffee. Michael couldn't eat or drink anything. My mom told me you wanted to meet. I did. I needed to see if you were real. Lily smiled sadly. I'm real. I've been real my whole life, even if no one acknowledged it. Tell me about him. Your father. My father. What was he like with you? Lily considered the question. Inconsistent. He would disappear for weeks, then show up and take me to the park or help with homework. When I was little, I thought he was a spy or something, because he was always so secretive about where he went. My mom eventually told me the truth when I was 12, that he had another family, that I was the secret. How did that feel? Like being erased, like I didn't fully exist. Michael understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. He wasn't much of a father to me either. I mean, he was there physically, sometimes, but he was always working, always distant. Maybe he didn't know how to be close to anyone. Or maybe he was too busy managing his double life. They talked for 2 hours. Lily told Michael about growing up, knowing her father loved her but could never publicly claim her, about spending holidays alone with her mother, while imagining Thomas was with his real family, about the strange mix of resentment and longing she felt whenever he visited. Michael told her about his own childhood, the loneliness of being an only child, the desperation to make his father proud, the slow realization that nothing he did would ever be enough. By the end of the conversation, Michael understood something that changed everything. Lily wasn't trying to steal his inheritance. She was just trying to be recognized, finally, as Thomas's daughter. And wasn't that exactly what Michael had spent his whole life wanting to? He drove back to Los Angeles that night with his mind churning. Jennifer was waiting up for him. How was it? She's my sister. I know. No, I mean, she's really my sister. Not some stranger trying to scam me. She's someone who grew up with the same absent father I did, except she had it worse, because at least I was allowed to exist. Jennifer sat down next to him. What are you going to do? I don't know, but I can't keep fighting her. It's not right. Patricia Vance was less understanding. Michael, I need to remind you that you have no legal obligation to share this estate. The will is clear. You can win this case. Maybe. But should I? That's not a legal question. No, it's a moral one. Michael proposed a settlement. He would give Lily 30% of the estate instead of 50%. In exchange, Claire would sign away any future claims. It was a compromise that left no one happy but gave everyone something. Claire initially rejected it. Thomas wanted her to have half. Thomas is dead, Michael said bluntly, and he left a will that gave me everything. I'm offering 30% out of fairness, not obligation. You can take it, or we can spend the next 5 years in court. Kessler advised Claire to accept 30% of $7.2 million is over $2 million. That's life-changing money. And Michael is right. The will is in his favor. We could win, but we could also lose. Claire signed the agreement on December 15th, 2023. The estate was divided. Michael received approximately $5 million and most of the property portfolio. Lily received $2.2 million and a commercial building in San Jose that generated rental income. But the story didn't end with signatures and wire transfers. Over the following months, Michael and Lily stayed in contact. Tentatively at first, just occasional emails, then phone calls. Then, in March 2024, Michael invited Lily to meet his children. Jennifer was nervous. "Are you sure they're ready?" "Probably not, but it's happening anyway." They met at a park in Los Angeles. Michael's son, Jake, was 8. His daughter, Emma, was 11. They had been told they had an aunt they'd never met. Emma was skeptical. Jake was curious. Lily brought her camera and took pictures of the kids playing. She was patient and kind, exactly as Claire had described. By the end of the afternoon, Emma was showing Lily her drawings, and Jake was teaching her a card game. Driving home, Emma asked, "Why didn't we know about Aunt Lily before?" Michael chose his words carefully, because Grandpa Thomas made some complicated choices, and it took us time to understand them. Did he not want us to know her? I think he wanted a lot of things. He never figured out how to make happen. In May 2024, Michael traveled to San Francisco and met Claire at her house. She made coffee. They sat in her modest living room surrounded by photographs of Lily at various ages. Thomas appeared in some of them, always looking slightly uncomfortable, like a visitor in someone else's life. "I owe you an apology," Michael said. Claire looked surprised. "For what?" "For assuming the worst about you, for thinking you were just after money. I understand why you thought that. Still, you spent 30 years in the shadows. That couldn't have been easy." Claire's eyes grew distant. "It wasn't, but I loved him, and I thought love was enough. By the time I realized it wasn't, Lily was born and I couldn't leave. He was her father, even if he couldn't be her father publicly. Why didn't you demand more? Demand that he acknowledge her?" "I did. Many times. He always said he would, eventually, that he needed more time. That it would hurt you too much. He was terrified of losing you. He didn't have me to lose. We barely had a relationship." "I know, but he didn't see it that way. In his mind, he was protecting you from the truth. The truth is, he was selfish." "Yes," Claire agreed. "But he was also trapped by his choices, by his pride, by his fear. He built a life that required constant maintenance of two separate worlds, and it exhausted him. I think that's part of what killed him, the stress of all those secrets." Michael thought about the letter his father had written but never sent, the apology that came too late. "Did he ever tell you he loved you?" Claire smiled sadly. "Sometimes. Usually when he was leaving, it always felt like an apology more than a declaration." They talked for hours that day. Claire showed Michael boxes of letters Thomas had written over the years. Most were mundane, updates about business, or brief notes about missing Lily. But some revealed the depth of emotion Michael had never seen in his father. In one letter from 2015, Thomas wrote, "I look at Lily and see everything I should have been. She's kind in ways I never learned to be. She's open in ways I never allowed myself to be. She deserves so much more than what I've given her. More than secrecy. More than shame. Someday, I'll make this right. I promise." "He never did make it right," Michael said quietly. "No. But maybe we can." In July 2024, on what would have been Thomas's 72nd birthday, Michael and Lily visited his grave together. It was the first time Lily had been to the cemetery. Thomas was buried next to Elizabeth, Michael's mother, in a plot Thomas had purchased decades earlier. Lily stared at the headstone. Thomas Richard Hartwell, beloved father. The inscription felt like a lie and a truth simultaneously. Do you think he loved me? Lily asked it. Yes, Michael said, without hesitation. I think he loved you, the only way he knew how, which wasn't enough, but it was something. Do you think he loved your mom? I think he did, once. Before ambition and secrets turned him into someone else. They stood in silence. 10. Lily Saeed. I'm sorry you got dragged into this. I'm sorry my existence complicated your life. You didn't complicate it. Dad did. And honestly, I'm glad I know you now. I spent my whole life as an only child, and it was lonely. At least now I have a sister. Lily smiled, tears in her eyes. Yeah? You do. The estate settlement was finalized in August 2024. Michael used part of his inheritance to pay off his mortgage and set up college funds for his kids, just as he'd planned. But he also set aside money for Lily, funding a scholarship for low-income students pursuing teaching degrees. It was named the Thomas Hartwell Educational Fund, though Michael insisted Lily's name be listed as Lily used her inheritance to buy a small house in Oakland and establish an after-school art program for underprivileged children. She quit teaching full-time to run the program, which she called Second Chances. Claire retired and spent her time volunteering and traveling, finally able to live without the weight of secrets. But the story's resolution wasn't clean or happy. It was complicated, like everything about Thomas Hartwell had been. In October 2024, 1 year after Claire had walked into Pemberton's office, Michael received a package. Inside was a flash drive with a video file. The label read, "For Michael, to be opened after everything is settled." He hesitated before playing it. Jennifer sat next to him. The video showed Thomas, clearly ill, sitting in what looked like a home office. The date stamp read March 2023, 3 months before his death. Thomas's voice was weak but clear. "Michael, if you're watching this," then Claire came forward, "and you know about Lily. I'm a coward for not telling you myself. I spent 50 years building walls. By the time I realized they were prisons, I didn't know how to tear them down. I loved your mother. I loved Claire. I loved you and Lily, but I loved myself more. And that's the truth I can finally admit now that I'm dying. I prioritized my comfort over everyone else's truth. I kept Claire hidden because it was easier than facing the scandal. I kept you at a distance because intimacy terrified me. I built an empire, but failed to build a family. The money I'm leaving behind is supposed to fix that. But money doesn't fix anything. It just highlights what's broken. I hope you and Lily find each other. I hope you're better siblings than I was a father."